Looking for the prenup, Vanessa?
The coffee was still hot when my world exploded. I was sitting in our renovated kitchen scrolling through Instagram like any other Tuesday morning when Vanessa's latest post appeared on my feed. My wife of 8 years, who was supposedly visiting her sick grandmother in Boston, was very much not in Boston. She was in Paris, in a red dress I'd never seen, with her arm around Adrian Hawke. The caption read, "Living my best life with an old flame." Sometimes you have to follow your heart, even when it breaks someone else's. Sorry, Lucas. Paris vibes, new beginnings, no regrets. I stared at the screen for a full 30 seconds, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. My wife, the woman who claimed she was too busy with her law practice to take a real vacation, and was posting couples photos from the City of Light with her college ex-boyfriend. And she'd tagged me in it. Classy, Vanessa. Really classy, I muttered to my empty kitchen. Adrian Hawke. I remembered him from Vanessa's old photos. Tall, dark-haired, the kind of guy who wore expensive suits and talked about his diplomatic connections. Last I heard, he was working at some embassy overseas. Apparently, he'd worked his way back into my wife's life. The comments were already pouring in, her law firm colleagues expressing shock with carefully worded responses, her girlfriends posting heart emojis and "You go, girl" messages. A few mutual friends asking if I was okay. I wasn't okay, but I was about to be strategic. I pulled out my laptop and got to work. 8 years in cybersecurity before starting my own IT consulting business had taught me a few things about digital leverage. Within 15 minutes, I'd frozen our joint checking account, suspended all shared credit cards, and remotely disabled the GPS and emergency roadside assistance on her car, which was apparently parked at Logan Airport. My phone started buzzing immediately. "Lucas?" Vanessa's voice was strained when I answered. "What did you do? My card isn't working and I can't access our account." "Oh, hey, honey. How's Grandma doing?" I asked, taking a sip of my coffee. "Still dying of that mysterious illness that required you to fly to Boston? Funny thing, I called Mass General, and they don't have any patient by your grandmother's name. But maybe that's because Grandma lives in Paris now." Silence. Then, "Lucas, you don't understand. This isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like my wife is on a romantic getaway with her ex-boyfriend while lying to her husband about visiting a sick relative? But hey, maybe I'm misreading the situation. Maybe that's not Adrian's hand on your A in the Louvre selfie." "You're being ridiculous. Adrian and I are just friends. We ran into each other and—" "Save it." I stood up and walked to our home office. "Trips canceled, Vanessa. Permanently." "What do you mean canceled? Lucas, you can't just—" "Watch me." I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I let it go to voicemail, then again and again. I was opening my second beer of the day, and it wasn't even noon when my neighbor Mrs. Carmody knocked on the door. She was 70-something, widowed, and had made neighborhood surveillance her full-time hobby since retiring from the post office. "Lucas, dear, I saw the Instagram post," she said, holding her phone up. "That little tramp. I always knew she was trouble. Too pretty, too ambitious. Women like that don't stay faithful. Thanks for the support, Mrs. Carmody." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish this beer, then I'm going to call my lawyer." She nodded approvingly. "Good. But first, you should know that fancy car of hers has been gone for 3 days, not one. I saw her loading suitcases Sunday night. She was on the phone, laughing. Didn't sound like someone worried about a sick grandmother." 3 days. She'd been planning this for at least 3 days, maybe longer. The sick grandmother story was just cover for her romantic European adventure. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Grant, this is Adrian Hawke. I think we need to talk. What you've done is childish and potentially illegal. I have connections that can make your life very difficult. Call me." I laughed out loud. The guy was actually threatening me. Through text message. What a professional. I forwarded the text to my buddy Mick, who ran the Rusty Anchor, the dive bar where I'd been drowning my sorrows since my consulting business hit a rough patch last year. Mick was ex-Army, built like a refrigerator, and had zero patience for entitled pricks. His response was immediate. "Want me to look this a-hole up? I know people." "Not yet," I texted back, "but keep the offer open." By evening, my phone had collected 17 missed calls from Vanessa, 4 from unknown international numbers that I assumed were Adrian, and one that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Grant, this is Patricia Kellerman from the U.S. Embassy in Paris. I'm calling regarding your wife, Vanessa Grant." There seems to be some confusion about her documentation and financial situation. We need to discuss this matter urgently. The embassy. Adrian had pulled diplomatic strings to get the embassy involved in our marital dispute. This was escalating beyond anything I'd expected. I called Mick. Anchor. Mick speaking. It's Lucas. I need a drink and some advice. The embassy is calling me about Vanessa. Embassy? What the heck did you do? Apparently, I married someone who thinks international incidents are an appropriate response to frozen credit cards. Get down here. First round's on me. The Rusty Anchor was exactly what it sounded like. A weathered dive bar that catered to construction workers, off-duty cops, and guys like me who needed somewhere to drink without judgment. Mick had bought it 5 years ago with his Army disability settlement and turned it into the kind of place where everyone knew your business but minded their own. So let me get this straight, Mick said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. Your wife fakes a family emergency to go bang her ex-boyfriend in Paris, posts about it on social media, and now the State Department is calling you? That's the summary, yeah. And this Adrian guy threatened you? I showed him the text. Mick's expression darkened as he read. Connections that can make your life difficult, he quoted. What a piece of crap. You know what? I'm curious about Mr. Diplomatic Immunity. Mind if I do some digging? Knock yourself out. The bar's regulars had started filtering in for the evening shift. Tommy the electrician, Janet from the DMV, Big Mike the contractor. We called him Big Mike to distinguish him from regular Mike, who was Mick. Word traveled fast in a place like this, and apparently my domestic drama had become the evening's entertainment. Saw the Instagram post, Janet said, settling onto the stool next to me. That woman's got some nerve, posting that crap where everyone can see it. She always was too good for this place, Tommy added. Remember when she came to your birthday party last year? Spent the whole time on her phone looking like someone was making her smell garbage. She called my bar charmingly authentic, Mick said. I should have known then she was a snake. My phone buzzed. Another text from Adrian. Embassy staff are trying to help an American citizen in distress. Your petty revenge is causing an international incident. Grow up. I showed the text to the group. Big Mike laughed so hard he nearly choked on his beer. International incident? Jesus, this guy's got an ego. You want me to text him back? I've got some thoughts about international relations. Thanks, but I'll handle it. I typed back. Vanessa is free to come home anytime. Her credit cards will work again when she files for divorce. Until then, she can ask her boyfriend to pay for her distress. The response came immediately. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you, I replied. Mick leaned over to read the exchange. This guy's really starting to piss me off. You know what? I'm going to make some calls. See what I can find out about our diplomatic friend. What kind of calls? The kind that use my old Army contacts. Amazing what you can learn about people when you know the right databases to check. By closing time, I was drunk enough to think confronting Vanessa and Adrian in person was a good idea, and sober enough to know it wasn't. Mick called me a cab and promised to have information about Adrian by tomorrow. Don't do anything stupid tonight, he warned as I climbed into the taxi. Save the stupid for when you're sober enough to do it right. I woke up Wednesday morning to find wife beater spray painted across my garage door in blood-red letters. The hangover was bad enough without having to deal with vandalism before my first cup of coffee. I stood in my driveway wearing yesterday's clothes and squinting at the graffiti in the morning sun. Whoever had done this had used expensive paint, the kind that wouldn't come off easily. Mrs. Carmody appeared at my elbow like a concerned ghost. I saw him, she announced. Little punk, maybe 16 or 17. Rode up on a bicycle around 2 a.m. I was going to call the police, but he was gone before I could get to the phone. Did you recognize him? Never seen him before, but he had one of those fancy bikes, the kind that cost more than my car, and he was wearing brand-name clothes. This wasn't some random vandalism, Lucas. Someone paid him to do this. I pulled out my phone and called Detective Ray Fallon, a regular at the Rusty Anchor who owed me a favor from when I'd helped recover his daughter's stolen laptop. Fallon. Ray, it's Lucas Grant. Someone tagged my garage last night. I've got a witness who saw the kid, and I think it's connected to my wife's, situation. The Instagram thing? Yeah, I heard about that. Half the department saw the post. What kind of tag are we talking about? Wife beater. In red paint. Silence. Then, crap, Lucas, that's not random teenage BS. That's targeted harassment. I'll be over in 20 minutes. Ray arrived with his partner, Detective Maria Santos, and a crime scene photographer. They documented the graffiti, took Mrs. Carmody's statement, and canvassed the neighborhood for security cameras. Your neighbor 3 houses down has a Ring doorbell that caught something, Santos reported. Kid on a mountain bike, stopped in front of your house at 2:17 a.m. We can't see his face, but we got a clear shot of the bike and his clothes. Expensive bike, Ray noted, scrolling through the footage on his phone. Trek, probably $1,500 minimum. And those sneakers are Air Jordans. This isn't some kid from the projects looking to cause trouble. Someone hired him, I said. That's what I'm thinking. You got any idea who might want to mess with you like this? I showed them Adrian's threatening texts. Ray's expression hardened as he read. Connections that can make your life difficult. You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like witness intimidation. And if this punk kid is connected to your wife's boyfriend, we've got ourselves a conspiracy. Can you find the kid? Oh, we'll find him. Expensive bike, expensive clothes, and a clear timestamp. This isn't exactly a master criminal we're dealing with. It took them 6 hours. The kid's name was Tyler Morrison, 17 years old, from the wealthy suburb of Westbrook. His parents were both doctors, which explained the expensive bike and designer clothes. What didn't make sense was why a rich kid would be spray painting wife beater on a stranger's garage at 2 in the morning. Ray called me at 4 p.m. We got him. Kid folded like a lawn chair the minute we mentioned federal charges for interstate harassment conspiracy. You want to hear this? Absolutely. Some guy with a European accent approached him at the Westbrook Mall yesterday afternoon, offered him $500 cash to vandalize a specific address, gave him the paint, told him exactly what to write, and said there'd be another $500 if he didn't get caught. European accent. Kid's words, not mine. Said the guy was tall, well-dressed, spoke like he was from England or something, showed him a photo of your house and gave him turn-by-turn directions. Did he get a name? Guy said his name was Mr. Andrews, paid in cash, no phone number, no contact information. But here's the interesting part. He knew the kid's name, knew he was looking for money to buy car parts, knew his schedule. This wasn't random. Someone did research. Adrian, it had to be. The timeline fit perfectly. Vanessa posts the Instagram photo Tuesday morning. I freeze the accounts. Adrian threatens me via text. And by Wednesday morning, someone's painting wife beater on my garage. What happens to the kid? Community service and restitution for the vandalism. But if we can prove this Mr. Andrews is your wife's boyfriend, then we're talking about a whole different level of charges. Interstate conspiracy, witness intimidation, harassment. This could get federal real quick. I'll send you everything I have on Adrian Hawk. Do that. And Lucas, be careful. If this guy's willing to hire teenagers to vandalize your house, there's no telling what else he might do. I spent the evening at the Rusty Anchor, updating Mick and the regulars on the day's developments. The consensus was unanimous. Adrian Hawk needed to learn some respect for American law enforcement. I got some information on your diplomatic friend, Mick said, sliding a folder across the bar. Turns out Mr. Hawk isn't quite as connected as he pretends to be. The folder contained printouts of Adrian's employment record, social media profiles, and what looked like an official government document. Adrian Hawk, age 42, currently employed as a cultural affairs liaison at the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Sounds impressive, right? Except cultural affairs liaison is basically a fancy title for guy who organizes cocktail parties for American tourists. He's not a diplomat. He's not even career State Department. He's a contract employee with about as much diplomatic immunity as my bartender's license. So the threats are complete BS. He can't make your life difficult any more than I can. Less, actually, since I at least know people who know people. This guy's a mid-level bureaucrat with a fancy business card. What about the embassy calling me? That was probably legitimate. When an American citizen overseas has financial problems, the embassy gets involved. But they're not going to take sides in a marital dispute, especially not for some contract employee who's sleeping with someone else's wife. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Adrian's threats had been bothering me more than I'd admitted, even to myself. The idea that some well-connected diplomat could make my life heck had kept me awake last night. But a contract employee with delusions of grandeur that I could handle. There's more, Mick continued. Remember how your wife met this guy in the college? Well, according to his social media history, they didn't just date, they were engaged. She broke it off senior year to go to law school. Apparently, old Adrian never got over it. How do you know all this? His LinkedIn profile reads like a romance novel. Sometimes the greatest opportunities come from reconnecting with the past. Posted 3 days ago, right around the time your wife was packing for her emergency trip to Boston. 3 days ago, the same timeline Mrs. Carmody had given me about Vanessa's suitcases. So this whole thing was planned. Oh, it was definitely planned. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown international number, Lucas Grant. Mr. Grant, this is Adrian Hawk. I think it's time we had a conversation man to man. The bar went quiet. Everyone could hear the pompous tone through the phone's speaker. Sure, Adrian, let's talk. Tell me, how's the cultural affairs business these days? Organizing many cocktail parties? Silence. Then, I see you've been doing research. I see you've been hiring teenagers to vandalize my property. How very diplomatic of you. I don't know what you're talking about. Tyler Morrison? Ring any bells? Kid with an expensive bike who's really bad at keeping secrets? More silence. I could practically hear Adrian's brain working, trying to figure out how much trouble he was in. Look, Grant, this has gotten out of hand. Vanessa and I, we have history. We reconnected and things happened. But she's not happy in her marriage. She hasn't been for years. Then she should have filed for divorce before booking a trip to Paris. It's not that simple. She was afraid of how you'd react. She thought if she could just get some space, some time to think. So she lied about her grandmother dying? That was unfortunate. Unfortunate, right. And hiring a kid to paint wife beater on my garage? What would you call that? Save it. Here's what's going to happen. You and my wife are going to come back to the United States. She's going to file for divorce, and you're going to stay the heck away from me and my property. Any questions? You can't dictate. I hung up. Mick was grinning. Think he got the message? If he didn't, he will. They came back Thursday night. I was in my home office working on a client's network security audit when I heard the front door open. For a split second, I thought maybe Vanessa had come to her senses, flown home to apologize and work things out like adults. Then I heard Adrian's voice. Told you he'd be reasonable once he cooled down. Men like Lucas are all bluster. I don't know, Vanessa replied. You didn't see his face when he found out about us. He was scary. Scary? He's an IT consultant who spends his days fixing computers. What's the worst he can do? Delete our Facebook accounts? I stayed quiet, listening from the office. They were in the living room, and from the sound of it, they were looking for something. Where does he keep the important papers? Adrian asked. There's a file cabinet in his office, but it's probably locked. What about the safe? Behind the painting in the bedroom, but I don't know the combination. My blood went cold. They weren't here to apologize or collect Vanessa's belongings. They were here to steal something. But what? I pulled out my phone and started recording, then crept to the office door to listen. The prenup has to be here somewhere, Vanessa was saying. If we can find it, maybe we can figure out a way around it. The prenup? Of course. Vanessa had insisted on it before we got married, claiming it was standard practice for lawyers. Now she was trying to find it so she and Adrian could look for loopholes. What exactly does it say? Adrian asked. Standard infidelity clause. If either of us cheats, the innocent party gets everything. House, savings, retirement accounts, everything. And you signed this? I was young and stupid. I thought it would never matter because I'd never cheat. But the clause goes both ways. If Lucas ever cheated, I'd get everything. So we need to make it look like he cheated first. I'd heard enough. I stepped out of the office and into the living room. Evening, folks, looking for something. Vanessa jumped like she'd been electrocuted. Adrian, to his credit, barely flinched. He was tall and lean, with the kind of expensive haircut that screamed diplomat and the kind of smug expression that screamed punchable face. Lucas, Vanessa said, her voice shaky. I came to get some of my things. Really? Because it sounded like you were looking for our prenup so your boyfriend could help you commit fraud. Adrian stepped forward, trying to position himself between me and Vanessa. Now see here, Grant, there's no need for accusations. Vanessa has every right to be in her own home. Her home? Interesting. See, according to the deed, this is my home. She's listed as a resident, not an owner. And you? I looked Adrian up and down. You're just trespassing. I'm a diplomatic. You're a party planner with a fancy business card. I know exactly what you are, Adrian. The question is, does the embassy know you're using your position to intimidate American citizens? His face flushed red. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I'm dealing with a middle-aged man who never got over being dumped in college and a cheating wife who's too cowardly to ask for a divorce. Adrian took another step forward. He was bigger than me, probably stronger, but I'd spent enough time at the Rusty Anchor to know how to handle myself in a confrontation. Careful, I warned. This is still my house, and I'm still recording this conversation. Assault charges would really complicate your visa status. He stopped, glancing at my phone. You're recording us? Every word? Vanessa talking about the prenup, you suggesting fraud, both of you admitting to breaking and entering. Should make for interesting evidence in the divorce proceedings. Vanessa found her voice. Lucas, please, we can work this out. We can be civilized about this. Civilized? You faked a family emergency to run off with your ex-boyfriend, posted about it on social media, and now you're breaking into my house to steal legal documents. That's your definition of civilized? I never meant for it to happen this way. Adrian and I, we just reconnected, and save it for your lawyer. You'll need one. Adrian was looking around the room like he was calculating his options. His gaze landed on my laptop, sitting open on the coffee table. You know, Grant, you might want to be more careful about what you say. Harassment, stalking, domestic intimidation, these are serious charges. And with my connections at the embassy, I could make sure they stick. Your connections? I laughed. You mean Patricia Kellerman? I called her back yesterday. Nice lady, she was very interested to hear about your threats and the vandalism incident. Apparently, the State Department takes a dim view of contract employees who use their positions for personal vendettas. The color drained from Adrian's face. You called Patricia? I called Patricia. I also called her supervisor. And his supervisor. Amazing how quickly people return your calls when you mention federal crimes. Vanessa was staring at Adrian with growing alarm. What federal crimes? Adrian, what did you do? Nothing. He's bluffing. Tyler Morrison, I said. Ring any bells? Adrian's jaw tightened. He knew he was caught. Who's Tyler Morrison? Vanessa demanded. The kid your boyfriend hired to vandalize our garage. The kid who's currently cooperating with the police. The kid who can identify Adrian from a photo lineup. Vanessa turned to Adrian, her face pale. You hired someone to vandalize Lucas's house? Are you insane? It was just meant to scare him, to make him back down. You committed a felony. Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? To my law license? Your law license? I interjected. Vanessa, you just broke into your estranged husband's house to steal legal documents. I don't think Tyler Morrison is your biggest problem right now. She sank onto the couch, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. Oh, God, what have I done? Adrian, meanwhile, was edging toward the door. Look, this has all been a misunderstanding. Maybe we should just go back to Paris. Let things cool down. Actually, I said, I don't think you're going anywhere. I pulled out my phone and dialed emergency. Emergency? What's your emergency? This is Lucas Grant at 47 Maple Street. I have 2 people in my house who broke in while I was home. I've got them on audio admitting to breaking and entering and conspiracy to commit fraud. Adrian bolted for the door. I didn't try to stop him. I had everything I needed on recording, and chasing him would only complicate things legally. Vanessa didn't run. She just sat on the couch, staring at her hands while we waited for the police to arrive. This isn't how I wanted things to end, she said quietly. Then you shouldn't have started them, I replied. Detective Fallon arrived with 2 patrol officers and Detective Santos. They took statements, collected my recording as evidence, and issued a bolo for Adrian. He won't get far, Fallon assured me. His passport's flagged, and embassy security is looking for him too. Turns out Patricia Kellerman wasn't kidding about the State Department taking this seriously. Vanessa was arrested for breaking and entering, though she was released on her own recognizance pending trial. As the officers led her to the patrol car, she turned back to me. I'm sorry, Lucas, I really am. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't fix this. After everyone left, I sat in my living room, looking at the chaos. Vanessa and Adrian had torn through my filing cabinet, scattered papers across the floor, and left drawers hanging open. But they hadn't found what they were looking for. The prenup wasn't in the filing cabinet. It was in my safe deposit box at the bank, along with copies of all our important documents. I'd learned that lesson from my cybersecurity days. Never keep your only copies in one location. I poured myself a drink and called Mick. How'd it go? He asked. Vanessa's in custody, Adrian's on the run, and I've got enough evidence to bury them both in court. Sounds like a good night's work? It's not over yet. Adrian's still out there, and he's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. Want me to come over? Keep an eye on things? Thanks, but I'm good. Besides, I've got a feeling Mr. Hawk is about to have bigger problems than me. I was right. Adrian was arrested at Logan Airport 6 hours later trying to board a flight to Montreal with a fake passport. Apparently, his diplomatic connections didn't extend to document forgery. The story made the local news. Embassy employee arrested in domestic harassment case. Adrian's mugshot was particularly unflattering. He looked like exactly what he was, a middle-aged man who'd let his obsession with an old girlfriend destroy his career. But I wasn't done with either of them yet. The USB stick changed everything. I found it Friday morning, wedged between the couch cushions where Adrian had been sitting. He must have dropped it during his panicked escape, and in all the chaos with the police, nobody had noticed. The stick was encrypted, but 8 years in cybersecurity had taught me a few tricks. It took me 3 hours and some creative password guessing to crack it open, but what I found inside made my blood run cold. Bank statements. Lots of them. Not just any bank statements. Statements from accounts I'd never seen before in Vanessa's name, with deposits that didn't match her law firm's salary. Over the past 2 years, someone had been moving money through these accounts. A lot of money, $50,000 here, $75,000 there. Always in amounts just under the federal reporting threshold, always from different sources. The deposits were labeled as consulting fees and legal services, but the account numbers didn't match any clients I knew about. I cross-referenced the dates with Vanessa's work calendar, which she'd synced to our shared Google account. On the days these mysterious payments were made, she'd been working late at the office or attending client meetings that weren't on her official schedule. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was embezzling. I called Detective Fallon immediately. "Ray, it's Lucas. I've found something you need to see. Can you come over?" "What kind of something?" "The kind that turns a domestic dispute into a federal case?" He arrived 20 minutes later with Detective Santos and a computer forensics specialist from the state police. I showed them the USB stick and walked them through what I'd found. "Jesus Christ," Santos muttered, scrolling through the bank statements. "This is over $500,000 we're looking at." "Where did you say you found this?" the forensics specialist asked. "Couch cushions. Adrian must have dropped it when he ran." "And you're sure this is your wife's account information?" I pointed to the account holder name and social security number. "That's definitely Vanessa, but I've never seen these accounts before, and we've been married 8 years. She's been hiding this from me." Fallon was studying the deposit dates. "These payments, they're all from the same time period when she was supposedly working late. You think she was using her position at the law firm to move money illegally? I think she was using her position to steal money. The question is, whose money and how?" "We'll need to bring in the FBI," Santos said. "If this crosses state lines, it's federal jurisdiction. And if she's been using her law license to commit fraud, her career is over," I finished. "Her career's the least of her problems. We're talking about serious prison time here." I should have felt vindicated. After everything Vanessa had put me through, the lies, the cheating, the public humiliation, discovering that she was also a criminal should have been satisfying. Instead, I just felt tired. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved for 8 years, had been living a double life. Not just the affair with Adrian, but this whole elaborate financial scheme. How long had she been lying to me? How many of our conversations had been carefully crafted deceptions? "There's something else," I said, pulling up another file from the USB stick. Email correspondence between Vanessa and Adrian going back 6 months. They weren't just planning the affair, they were planning to disappear together. The emails painted a picture of two people who thought they were smarter than everyone around them. Adrian had been feeding Vanessa information about offshore banking and diplomatic immunity. Vanessa had been researching non-extradition countries and international law. They'd been planning to steal the money and run. "Look at this one," Santos said, reading over my shoulder. "Vanessa to Adrian, dated 3 weeks ago. Elle is getting suspicious about my work schedule. We need to move up the timeline. Can you arrange the Paris meeting for next week instead of next month?" "The Paris meeting," Fallon said. "That's when she was supposed to be visiting her dying grandmother. They were going to clean out the accounts and disappear to some country without an extradition treaty," I realized. The whole Instagram post, the public humiliation, that was just meant to distract me while they executed their exit strategy. "Except you froze the accounts before they could transfer the money," the forensics specialist noted. "You accidentally stopped a major financial crime." My phone rang. It was Mick. "You need to get down to the bar," he said without preamble. Now, I'm kind of busy with the police right now. Trust me, you want to see this. Turn on channel 7. I grabbed the remote and switched to the local news. A reporter was standing outside Vanessa's law firm, interviewing what looked like FBI agents. Ongoing investigation into alleged embezzlement and money laundering involving a senior associate at the prestigious firm of Morrison, Keller and Associates. Sources tell us that Vanessa Grant, wife of local IT consultant Lucas Grant, has been arrested on federal charges. The screen showed footage of Vanessa being led out of the law firm in handcuffs. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. The confident, ambitious woman who'd posted those Instagram photos from Paris was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and scared. "Well," Fallon said, "looks like the FBI moved fast." My phone started buzzing with calls from reporters, neighbors, and people I hadn't heard from in years. The story was spreading quickly. Small-town scandal involving adultery, embezzlement, and international intrigue was exactly the kind of thing that captured public attention. I ignored most of the calls, but when Mrs. Carmody knocked on the door, I let her in. "I saw the news," she said, settling into my kitchen chair like she belonged there. "That woman was stealing money. Looks like it." "How much money?" "Enough to buy a house, maybe 2 houses." She shook her head. "I always knew she was trouble, but I never thought—" "How are you holding up, dear?" That was the question everyone kept asking, and I still didn't have a good answer. How was I supposed to feel when I discovered that my entire marriage had been built on lies? "I'm angry," I said finally. "And I'm sad. And I'm relieved that it's over." "What will you do now?" "I don't know. Divorce her, obviously. Testify at her trial if they need me to. Try to figure out how to rebuild my life." "You'll be fine," Mrs. Carmody said with the confidence of someone who'd lived through her own share of disasters. "You're stronger than you think, and at least now you know the truth." The truth. That was supposed to make everything better, wasn't it? But knowing that my wife was a criminal didn't make the betrayal hurt less. If anything, it made it worse. At least when I thought she'd just fallen in love with someone else, I could understand it. Love was messy and complicated, and sometimes people made mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. This was calculated, premeditated deception. Vanessa had been planning to destroy our marriage and steal $500,000, and she'd been planning it for months. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. Vanessa's lawyer. "Mr. Grant, this is David Chen from Chen & Associates. I'm representing your wife in this matter. Congratulations. I was hoping we could discuss a possible plea arrangement. My client is willing to cooperate fully with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence." What does that have to do with me? She's also prepared to waive any claim to marital assets and agree to an uncontested divorce. She understands that her actions have caused you significant harm, and she wants to make this as easy as possible for you. I almost laughed. After everything she'd done, Vanessa was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to manage the situation to her advantage. "Tell your client that if she wants to make this easy for me, she can start by explaining where the money came from and how long she's been stealing it." "Mr. Grant, I understand you're angry." "I'm not angry, I'm done. Your client made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences." I hung up. The FBI agents finished their work and left, taking the USB stick as evidence. Detective Fallon promised to keep me updated on the investigation, but warned that it could take months to unravel the full extent of Vanessa's financial crimes. That evening, I drove to the Rusty Anchor. The bar was packed. Apparently, being married to a federal criminal had made me a local celebrity. People I barely knew were buying me drinks and offering sympathy. "Heck of a week," Mick said, sliding a beer across the bar. "Heck of a marriage, more like. You know what the best part is? You're free. No more walking on eggshells around Princess Vanessa. No more pretending her law firm friends are interesting. No more expensive restaurants that serve portions the size of quarters." He was right. For the first time in years, I could do whatever I wanted without worrying about Vanessa's approval. I could eat pizza for breakfast, watch sports all weekend, and spend my evenings at a dive bar without getting lectures about professional image. "So what's the plan?" Mick asked. "I don't have a plan. For 8 years, every decision I made was filtered through what Vanessa would think about it. I don't even know what I want anymore." "That's the beauty of it. You've got time to figure it out." But even as I sat there, surrounded by friends and well-wishers, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Vanessa and Adrian were in custody, but they'd both proven they were willing to do desperate things when cornered. And desperate people always had one more card to play. The law firm's annual gala was supposed to be Vanessa's night to shine. She'd been planning it for months. The elegant venue, the carefully curated guest list, the opportunity to network with judges and senior partners. It was the kind of event that could make or break a lawyer's career, and Vanessa had been determined to make it perfect. Instead, she was sitting in a federal holding cell while I walked into the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel as her estranged husband and star witness in her embezzlement case. I hadn't planned to attend. The invitation had been sitting on my kitchen counter for weeks, and after everything that happened, crashing my wife's professional social event seemed petty and unnecessary. But then Cleo called. Cleo Martinez had been Vanessa's best friend since law school and her closest confidant at the firm. She was also the one person who knew all of Vanessa's secrets, including some that hadn't made it into the FBI investigation. "We need to talk," she said when I answered the phone Saturday morning. "Can you meet me at the hotel? There's something you need to know before Vanessa's trial." "What kind of something?" "The kind that changes everything. I'll be in the bar at 7. Come alone." The Westbrook Hotel was exactly the kind of place Vanessa loved. All marble columns and crystal chandeliers, designed to make people feel important. The gala was in full swing when I arrived, with lawyers and judges mingling over cocktails and discussing cases in hushed, self-important tones. I found Cleo at the bar, nursing what looked like her third martini. She was a small, sharp-featured woman with the kind of intensity that made people uncomfortable. Vanessa had always described her as brilliant but difficult, which I'd eventually learned was Vanessa speak for smarter than me but willing to do my dirty work. "You came," she said when she saw me. "You said it was important." "It is." She gestured to the bartender. "Get him whatever he wants. This is going to take a while." I ordered a beer and waited. Cleo was clearly working up to something, and pushing her would only make her clam up. "How much do you know about the money?" she asked finally. "I know Vanessa stole it. I know she was planning to run away with Adrian. I know she's looking at serious prison time. But do you know where the money came from?" "Client accounts, I assumed. Isn't that usually how lawyers embezzle?" Cleo laughed bitterly. "Client accounts? Jesus, Lucas, you really don't know anything, do you? Then enlighten me." She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of bank transfers. The amounts matched what I'd seen on Adrian's USB stick, but these showed the source of the deposits. "Morrison, Keller and Associates has a very exclusive client," Cleo said. "A client who pays extremely well for legal services that exist in a gray area of the law, money laundering for pills dealers mostly, but also some human trafficking and arms dealing." I stared at the phone screen. The firm was laundering money for criminals? Not the firm, Vanessa. She was the only one who knew about this client. She set up the whole operation herself, using her access to the firm's accounts and her knowledge of international banking law. "And you knew about this?" "I helped her set it up." Cleo's voice was flat, emotionless. "She convinced me it was just creative accounting for wealthy clients who wanted to avoid taxes. By the time I realized what we were really doing, I was in too deep to back out." The pieces started falling into place. Vanessa's late nights at the office, her mysterious client meetings, her sudden expertise in international finance. "How long?" I asked. 2 years, maybe a little longer. She started small, just moving money for one client. But word got around in certain circles, and soon she had a whole network of people who needed cash cleaned. And Adrian? Adrian was her exit strategy. She knew it couldn't last forever. Either the FBI would catch on, or the clients would decide she knew too much. So she reconnected with her old boyfriend, convinced him to help her disappear, and started planning her escape, using me as cover, the perfect cover. Respectable husband, stable marriage, no reason for anyone to suspect she was living a double life. You were her alibi, Lucas. Every time she told a client she couldn't meet because she had family obligations, every time she explained away her nervousness as marital stress, you were the reason people believed her. I felt sick. It wasn't just that Vanessa had cheated on me or even that she'd stolen money. She'd used our entire marriage as camouflage for a criminal enterprise. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's not done." Cleo finished her martini and signaled for another. "Vanessa's lawyer called me yesterday. She wants to make a deal with the FBI. Full cooperation in exchange for witness protection." Witness protection? She's going to give up her clients, all of them, names, bank accounts, transaction records, everything. The FBI will relocate her, give her a new identity, and she'll disappear forever. What does that have to do with me? She wants you to corroborate her story. She's going to claim that you knew about the money laundering, that you helped her set up the computer systems, that you were a willing participant in the whole operation. The room started spinning. That's insane. I never knew anything about any of this. I know that, you know that. But Vanessa's very convincing, and she's got 8 years of marriage to draw on for details. She knows your work schedule, your computer skills, your financial situation. She can make it sound very plausible that you were her technical partner. She's going to frame me. She's going to try. And if it works, you'll be facing the same federal charges she is, except you won't have anything to trade for a reduced sentence. I stood up, pacing behind my bar stool. Around us, the gala continued, lawyers laughing and networking, completely oblivious to the conversation happening 3 feet away. What do you want from me? I asked. I want to stop her. Cleo's voice was hard now, all pretense of friendship gone. Vanessa destroyed my career, destroyed my life, and now she's trying to destroy yours too. But I've got something she doesn't know I have. She pulled a small digital recorder out of her purse. 3 months ago, when Vanessa was planning her escape with Adrian, she got drunk and told me everything. How she was going to frame you if anything went wrong. How she'd been documenting your computer access to make it look like you were involved. How she was going to claim you were a controlling and emotionally harmful husband who forced her into crime. You recorded her? I recorded her. 2 hours of her explaining exactly how she planned to ruin your life to save her own. And I've got copies of all the real financial records. The ones that show she was working alone, the ones that prove you never had access to the criminal accounts. Why didn't you go to the FBI with this? Because I was hoping she'd just plead guilty and serve her time quietly. But now that she's trying to take you down with her, Cleo shrugged. I guess I have a conscience after all. What do you want me to do? Help me expose her, tonight, in front of everyone who matters. I looked around the ballroom. Half the legal establishment of the state was here. Judges, prosecutors, senior partners from competing firms. If we were going to destroy Vanessa's reputation completely, this was the perfect audience. How? Cleo smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Leave that to me. Just be ready to back me up when I give you the signal. She stood up and walked toward the podium where the evening speakers were preparing to address the crowd. I watched her go, wondering if I was about to make a terrible mistake. But then I thought about everything Vanessa had done. The lies, the cheating, the embezzlement, and now the plan to frame me for her crimes. She'd used our marriage as a cover for criminal activity, and now she was trying to use our divorce to escape the consequences. I was done being Vanessa's victim. The master of ceremonies was introducing the evening's keynote speaker when Cleo approached the podium. She whispered something to him, and he looked confused but stepped aside. Ladies and gentlemen, Cleo said, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom sound system. I apologize for the interruption, but I have something important to share with you tonight. The crowd quieted, sensing drama. My name is Cleo Martinez, and I worked at Morrison, Keller and Associates. You may have heard about the recent arrest of my colleague Vanessa Grant on federal embezzlement charges. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone had heard about Vanessa's arrest. It had been front-page news for days. What you haven't heard, Cleo continued, is the full extent of her crimes, or her plan to frame an innocent man to save herself. She nodded at me, and I stood up. Every eye in the room turned toward me, and I felt like I was on trial myself. Vanessa Grant wasn't just embezzling client funds, Cleo said. She was running a money laundering operation for pills dealers and human traffickers. And when she got caught, she decided to claim that her husband, Lucas Grant, was her partner in these crimes. The room erupted. Lawyers were pulling out their phones, judges were whispering to each other, and I could see several people heading for the exits, probably to call reporters or federal prosecutors. I have recordings, Cleo announced, holding up the digital device. Recordings of Vanessa Grant explaining exactly how she planned to destroy her husband's life to save her own. Recordings that prove Lucas Grant was an innocent victim of his wife's deception, not a willing participant in her crimes. She pressed play, and Vanessa's voice filled the ballroom. Lucas is perfect for this. He's got the technical skills to make it look plausible, but he's too trusting to ever suspect what I'm really doing. If anything goes wrong, I can just claim he was controlling the whole operation and I was too afraid to stop him. Who's going to believe that little IT nerd over a successful lawyer? The recording continued for several more minutes, with Vanessa describing in detail how she planned to frame me, how she'd been documenting my computer access to create false evidence, and how she intended to claim I was emotionally harmful and controlling. By the time it ended, the ballroom was silent except for the sound of people typing on their phones. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cleo said, "I give you the real Vanessa Grant. A woman who used her marriage as cover for criminal activity, who betrayed every principle of our profession, and who was willing to destroy an innocent man to save herself." She stepped away from the podium and walked back to me. "Think that'll do it?" she asked. Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Detective Fallon. "Lucas, where are you? I've got about 50 people calling me saying you just exposed some kind of conspiracy at a lawyer party." "I'm at the Westbrook Hotel, and yeah, I guess I did. Stay there. The FBI wants to talk to you. And Lucas, whatever you just did, I hope you've got evidence to back it up." "We do," I said, looking at Cleo. "We've got everything." The next few hours were a blur of FBI agents, prosecutors, and reporters. Cleo turned over her recordings and financial documents, providing the evidence needed to prove that I'd never been involved in Vanessa's crimes. By midnight, the story was national news. Lawyer's embezzlement scheme, exposed at professional gala. Vanessa's plan to frame me had backfired spectacularly, and her plea deal was off the table. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Adrian got 10 years for conspiracy and witness intimidation. Cleo received immunity in exchange for her cooperation. And me? I got my life back. 6 months later, I was sitting at the Rusty Anchor, celebrating the finalization of my divorce. Mick had declared it a freedom party, and half the bar had shown up to toast my new single status. "So what's next?" Mick asked, refilling my beer. "I'm thinking about traveling," I said. "Maybe take that European vacation Vanessa and I never got around to." "Paris? God, no, somewhere she's never been. Somewhere I can make my own memories." Mrs. Carmody, who'd become something of a local celebrity for her role in the investigation, raised her glass. "To Lucas," she announced, "who proved that nice guys don't always finish last." "Sometimes," I said, "they just finish."